So I think he does end up staying in Phoenix. He's kind of an underwhelming player. I think the more interesting aspect would be, if we want to talk Kansas basketball players, is will the Timberwolves trade Andrew Wiggins, and will the Pacers or some of these mid-level teams, maybe a Memphis who's trying to get as much scoring as they can, bring him in? Will he be on the move? I think Wiggins will stay in Minnesota, but I certainly think he's on the trading block.
Well, I know you do a lot of work up there in Chicago and Cleveland, for that matter, but I know you do a lot of coverage of the Bears and the Bulls. We talked about Rubio coming to the Pacers, but maybe the reality is that he's going to be a Chicago Bull and not an Indiana Pacer.
I mean, the question though with the Bulls has been for the last few years is what the hell are they? You know, I mean, they were a team that traded, and made some trades and made some moves, but also, stockpiled some older dudes. It's just I don't think they have an identity. I don't think the Bulls know who they are. And Ricky Rubio saying, I don't know what that really does for them at this point. I think that you got to figure out, if you're the Chicago Bulls, what kind of team are you? And right now it's just a hodgepodge mess. And that's what it's continued to be for the last couple of years. They've got some good young players. They've made some questionable draft picks, but first and foremost, they just have to figure out what they are, and I don't think they have a direction right now.
Tony, the Knicks are no longer the dominant team in New York. People don't come to New York to play for the Knicks like they used to. They come to play for the Nets, not the Knicks. Same town, same city. Knicks used to dominate that. Knicks will get Marcus Morris, but they won't even make a play for Kevin Durant or some of the other big A-list free agents that really would want to play in New York. They won't even make the play for that. So they're going to make a play for Marcus Morris, and they're going to get him. But why won't the Knicks rebuild their face? I know they got to the playoffs, and maybe they're making things a little bit better, but now you think of the Nets more than you think about the Knicks in New York City.
Yeah, like Mo said, just the way that the Knicks franchise has been ran over the last, let's say, 5 years kind of makes you stop and think. Did you see what the Nets have done? And the Nets have built to the draft. They got D'Angelo Russell in that trade. They've moved some pieces. They had, guys like Dinwiddie, who was with the Bulls and got let go. It was kind of that grinded out team was what the Nets had last year to get to the playoffs and win some games. With the Knicks, you think, why wouldn't somebody want to go there? And it's got to be because the front office is just so kind of handcuffing themselves that they don't give them a chance to make a run at anybody. So I think the Knicks will see, oh, man, well, the Nets are getting all these stars and people are interested in the Nets. And if D'Angelo leaves and Kyrie can end up there and maybe even Durant, who they're favored to land Durant, I think if you're the Knicks, you got to take a step back and look and say, okay, what can we do to get back into that position? And maybe go after a guy like Klay Thompson, or maybe go after some big names. So, I just maybe the appeal of the Knicks, and so they've been a mediocre franchise for the last 15 years, kind of sticks and resonates in some of these players' minds, and maybe the glitz and the glamour of New York has just faded off for some of these players.
And one of those players is DeAndre Jordan, Mo. He goes to Houston. What are your thoughts?
I think DeAndre Jordan is a guy that could very well wind up with the Lakers. If the Lakers cleared enough cap space to sign another star, but I think if the Lakers are smart at this point, they'll try to use that over maybe three guys instead of one superstar. Reports last night have said that there is mutual interest between DeAndre Jordan and the Lakers. It's going to be weird to see. But I think that the problem with DeAndre Jordan is you get great rebounding, you get great defense, but a team like the Lakers, I don't know that that's a great fit for him, because the Lakers are going to need shooting, they're going to need scoring. You've got guys in LeBron James and Anthony Davis that can score the ball close, but at some point you're going to need to find shooting for the Lakers. Houston would be interesting if Clint Capella's on the move. It's just, again, what has Houston decided they're going to be this year? They're another team that are they going to be all James Harden all the time? And if so, they've got to realize sooner or later that formula doesn't work. So DeAndre Jordan in Houston would definitely help the defense, but I don't know that that's the right fit for him.
Tony, I felt, and we talked about this before last week in the draft, we felt like the Celtics did a good job in the draft, and they were one of the winners. And they obviously got Romeo, and they've got Carson from Purdue, Romeo from IU. But Terry Rozier's the glue there, if you will, and he's the one that's going to make these young players great. Terry Rozier stays with the Celtics.
I mean, he's going to have interest. I know the Pacers are going to throw an offer out at Rozier and say, look, hey, we need a point guard. Aaron Collison, who, as Mo mentioned, they didn't expect him to come back. He was not going to come back. That was not the expectation. But they need a point guard. The thing that I look at with Rozier is he's a great player off the bench. How will he do in a starting role? And when Kyrie was out, he did step up and put up some good numbers. It'll be interesting to see where he lands. And I think Boston is probably, obviously, like you said, the front runner to keep him because they know what they have, and they'll be able to do so. But I think he'll certainly get interest from other teams, the Bulls, who possibly need a point guard, the Detroit Pistons, the Pacers, some of the teams that are maybe that in between the 6th and 10 range in the Eastern Conference. I think they'll throw some money at Rozier as well.
Mo, a player that had kind of a silent but excellent season down in Orlando, Terrence Ross. I see no reason why he needs to go anywhere. He's got it comfortable. He's got it good down there with the Magic.
He has it comfortable and good, but at some point I think you want to be a little more competitive. I don't know that. I mean, Orlando, they got themselves in the playoffs. They beat Toronto in a game, but I guess it depends at this point in your career what you want to do. Do you want to compete for a championship, or you want to compete to try to make the 7th or 8th spot in the playoffs? So, Orlando's a great city to live in, but I guess it's going to depend on what his mindset is. Does he like the comfortable gig and hey, that's okay, or does he want to go win a championship?
Tony, we've talked about the Lakers and we talked about what they're doing there. They have become the Knicks as opposed to like the Nets and the Knicks. We talk about the Lakers and the Clippers, and the Lakers are quietly, if you watch the Game of Thrones, they're building their own little secret thing going on here with LeBron James and Space Jam 2 and all the different angles that they're working. A guy is going to move across town, and that's Patrick Beverley. He's going to leave the Clippers, go to the Lakers. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I thought Mo had a great point. If you're smart, you're the Lakers, instead of going to get that one max guy and then filling the roster and the bench with a bunch of quote-unquote scrubs, that's not the way to go. You want to go get maybe a DeAndre Jordan for a little bit cheaper. Maybe you want to go get a George Hill, maybe a Harrison Barnes, a guy who can score up the bench, because obviously you have to field at least – you're going to have some kind of bench. LeBron can't do it all, and Anthony Davis can't do it all. They have, 4 players under contract right now, so it'll be interesting to see what the Lakers do. Patrick Beverley, it'll be interesting to see if these players start taking a little bit of a pay cut like Anthony Davis did to kind of free up a little bit more salary to bring in another guy. So it'll be interesting to see what the Lakers do. And like you said, I mean, you got Kobe calling Kawhi, you've got LeBron calling Kawhi, you've got, hey, Klay Thompson's hurt, so we'll get you a spot in Space Jam 2 because we start filming this summer. There's some promises that can be made there. And what I've always said about the difference between the Lakers and a team like the Pacers is when you go to a Pacer game, you have you have Terry Lee Honda advertising on the backboard. You go to a Laker game when they're pulling out Maseratis at halftime that you could win by hitting the half-court shot. So it's just a different appeal. It's different glitz and glamour. And we'll see what the Lakers can do. But like Mo said, you could go after one more big guy, but you have to have salary relief. You have to have other players. And Valanciunas is going out there would be big. Is at the center off the bench. And maybe some of these guys like a Thomas Satoransky, who's not going to demand that much money in the market, that could be a decent player. I think could end up out there. Maybe a Glenn Robinson III, who kind of got lost in the shuffle in Detroit, but still may have some quote-unquote tread on the tires for cheap. And we'll see what they do. We'll see if a guy like maybe Terrence Ross has interest, or if they go after guys like, Shumpert, who has played with LeBron in the past, that could be cheap.
Mo, I don't know where your flight is. I mean, we're running, coming out and down to the end of the clock here. But one good thing about winning the NBA National Championship is that you won the NBA National Championship. And you can say to your players, we won it because of you. Kawhi is one of those. Obviously, yes, they're going to be coming after him hard. And I don't know that we've gotten a firm commitment that he's going to go anywhere. Chances are that he will. But I think one guy will say, okay, Kawhi, if you want to go, I'll take this team over, and I'm going to make it my team, and that's Mark Gausel with Toronto. He stays at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely in Toronto to stay. But when you look at a guy like Kawhi, I think if he stays in Toronto, it's going to be like the LeBron James, Cavs type deal. It'll be a 1-and-1. He'll sign for a year and have the option to opt out the year after. I don't think you see Kawhi sign a long-term deal, in Toronto if he does stay. I think it'll be that LeBron James type Cleveland deal. I guess it's going to depend what Kawhi wants to do. He's a different type of cat. What is it that he wants next? Does he want to go home to the West Coast? Does he want to play with LeBron and Anthony Davis? Is that what he wants to do? Because, again, I don't know that if you get Kawhi and you spend all that money on him in L.A., that he plays more than 60 or 65 games for you this year and gets ready for the playoffs like last year. That's going to be the thing. It's the new trend, I think, this year for superstars, even guys that you're going to sign as free agents. I think that whole load management thing is going to become the new term in the NBA this year. So, Kawhi could very well wind up in Toronto, but if he does, I think it's a short-term deal.
Mo, appreciate you jumping on with us today. Sometimes flight delays are to the benefit of others. I hope you have a good time out there in Colorado, sir.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Mo for the BS Sports Show. You can catch him at Mo Radio on Twitter. Real quickly, we'll wrap things up here with Tony Donahue of the Tony D podcast. Real quickly, we introduced the Tony D podcast last week, but maybe those that didn't hear it, where and what is the Tony D podcast, Tony?
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. It's a part of the Podbean network that I put together to just kind of continue to share my thoughts. And I did it the other day in the Portillo's parking lot, which was delicious. But it's part of the Podbean network. So Podbean.
Live remote.
Search Tony D. Yeah, live remote. I love Portillo's. So, and you can always find it and check me out by following me on Twitter at Tony D Indy. And I'm looking forward to this free agency period, not just centered around the Pacers here locally. But what everybody does around the NBA and when the dominoes kind of start to fall.
Tony, let's get your thoughts on this. I mean, everything's got to go political these days. Everything's got to go PC. But I think it's gone too far. The NBA says, well, a lot of the teams, we're not going to call our owners anymore. We're going to call them governors. And it goes back to a time in our history in the United States that I don't think anybody is proud of. But there's nobody alive that ever – there's nobody alive these days who owned slaves, who owns any of that. I get it. It was a dark time in our history. We fought a war over that, not just that, but obviously it was a dark time in our history. I get it. But to say, oh, well, we're not going to call our owners, we're going to call them governors. First of all, let's express our stupidity and lack of knowing of history, because you know how many Southern governors actually owned slaves? Governors and owners are not the same thing, but you're saying the same thing. What are your thoughts on this stupidity of – I'm sorry, that's my hot take of the day. I'm going to get off my soapbox here, but that is the most stupidity remark that I've seen come out of the NBA in a long time.
So do they expect, owners of restaurants and owners of stores and owners of everything in the world to change from owners to governors or change to another name? Yeah, it just kind of seems – I can get the standpoint a little bit, but again, I feel like a lot of people don't change with the times and realize it's 2019 and things are different than what they were 30, 40 years ago, and certainly definitely different than what they were hundreds of years ago. This is the first I've heard of it. I'm not too entertained by it, and I think it's the will and the way to be politically correct. If people are complaining about it, people are complaining about it. But it's hard for me to believe that, and it just kind of seems like it's something that, like you said, isn't the smartest play in the world.
Absolutely. Well, you can get more information in by Googling it if you want. Tony, we appreciate you joining us, sir. You have yourself a good weekend. Enjoy some of this hot weather we got coming our way. I'll take it.
You got it, my man. Thanks again.
All right. Tony Donahue of the Tony D podcast, Mo for the BS Sports Show. Guys, that wraps it up for us, man. What a show. What a show! We started off, we've been rocking it ever since. Matthew Embury taking some time from the U.S. Senior Open up there in South Bend. If you're going up there, enjoy your day up there on the golf course. Steve Wilson, Speedway Digest, talked about NASCAR rolling off there in Chicago. Matt Hicks talked a little homework card in NBA free agency. And, of course, it is NBA free agency, so we'll see what happens. My name's Tom Marquis, El Presidente. You know, we do this thing called The Balance